thank you all for coming. It's not easy driving weather out there, I can see, so very nice to gather together. This morning we want to talk about, Devi Ji and I will each talk for a little while, and then we'll have some questions and answers. But we want to talk about attunement with the Guru, which is the core of the spiritual path for all of us who have taken Yogananda Ji as our Guru, and in fact for anyone who has taken a Guru, whether it is in our line or not. The core of the core then becomes attuned. Swamiji said that to the public, Master would give many talks. He would give talks on relationships and how to and India's business methods and how they could help America, and many, many different talks. When he was privately or with a small group of people having lunch or dinner, he would be outward, he would be very kind and charming, in fact. But Swami said that when he was with his disciples, those who were really there, he was most of the time silent, and always he talked about the primary thing for the disciples is attunement with the Guru. Several times he said things like, so-and-so left, and now he's having a great deal of difficulties in his life, and it didn't need to happen if only he had stayed in tune. All of that karma didn't need to happen. So the Guru is like a combination of a doctor who can see our illness. We all are quite ill, but we don't recognize the symptoms. You know, we aren't necessarily ill physically, maybe not even very ill emotionally and psychologically, although all of us are, as Master said, a little bit crazy. We just gather together with others who share our craziness so it doesn't become so apparent. So we're all dealing with, emotional and psychological problems, and we deal constructively or not so constructively with those. But all of us share a spiritual illness, and that's the ignorance. Unless you know, as you sit here, that this body that you see, the bodies of other people that you see, the minds, the personalities, that all of those are just dreams of God, that you're a dream of God. Unless you know that, then you're having a spiritual illness. And because we're caught in a dream world, in a dream bubble, we don't recognize very easily the symptoms of spiritual illness. But the symptoms of spiritual illness are things like, is there ever a moment when you're not in the most expansive possible state of bliss? If there's a moment, let alone a whole lifetime, when you're not blissful, that's one of the symptoms of spiritual illness. Do you have conflicts or judgment or criticism of other people? If so, that's a spiritual illness. And so I could list a list that would go from here to Noida, and it would still go on. So there are all kinds of spiritual illnesses, but we don't recognize them as such because we gather together with others who have the same kind of spiritual illness, and everybody's saying, well, I'm okay. Are you okay? Yeah, well, I'm okay, except I'm a little unhappy, and the fellow is cheating me on the rent, but other than that, and so it goes on because we all share the same bubble of a dream. The Guru is here not to fix up that dream. Swami said the Guru doesn't come to make your mud puddle more comfortable. He comes to get you out of that mud puddle. And so he knows things and things that we don't even begin to dream of. David G. and I were just taking a period of seclusion up at Abbot Mount, which is a little seclusion place for Ananda. Wonderful to be up, it's up not too far from Nanda Devi, and in the country of the Pandavas up there, and Babaji, and being up in the heights, Himalayan foothills, being able to spend longer, many hours in meditation, the mind just rises up, and in that state, it's like, if we're down at ground level, we look around, and if you're standing at ground level, you look around, and maybe the most you can see is a block or 2 block area. And you see all of that in detail, but you can't even see the horizon. And today you can't see the sun. So our viewpoint is quite limited. But the Guru's viewpoint, because he's not limited by being caught in this bubble of Maya, in this dream of delusion, his viewpoint is not only vast, but it's omnipresent, and it is not only enormously vast, and this is something that Master clarified, because we think, the Guru, he's so big, he's out in bliss, he's out in, the vastness of the galaxies, and that's where his mind is. One time a man came to Yoganandaji and said, basically, if God's infinite, why should he care about me? One little person on a little mud ball in an insignificant galaxy. Why should he care about me? His infinite consciousness. And Master replied beautifully. He said, your concept of infinity is too narrow. He said, God is not only infinitely large, he's infinitely small. He cares about you because he's in you. He is you. He cares about you through you caring about you. And so his consciousness is within. It isn't outside. We shouldn't pray to God. Master said to his first disciple, you're praying wrong, Dr. Lewis. He said, you're praying to God. You should pray in God. You should pray knowing that you're already wrapped in God's consciousness, wrapped in his aura. Now, we don't have that level of realization yet, but at least intellectually, we shouldn't put God outside of ourselves. We should put God inside. And so attunement with the Guru will help us with all of this spiritual disease that we all suffer. So do we really need a guru? We were in Gurgaon a few years ago, and there was a reporter from some magazine in India, and she was interviewing Swami Kriyananda, and whether she had the question herself or whether she was asking it on behalf of the readers, she said, do we really need a guru? And Swami surprised us all. He said, no, you don't need a guru. Why would you want somebody telling you what to do, telling you how to behave, telling you how to live your life? Why would you want somebody doing that? You don't need a guru. Unless, of course, you want to find God. Then you need a guru. Because otherwise we meander around in this bubble of delusion, and we need somebody who's above that. There was a very arrogant young athlete, a basketball player, and he was very good, very skilled. And so he came to the coach and he said, I'm a much better basketball player than you are, why do I need you? And the coach said something very interesting. He said, because you do not know what you do not know, but I do. And so a guru knows what we need far beyond what we can conceive with our limited intellectual mind. And so the guru comes and he gives us teachings. So for all of us, I won't dwell on why we need a guru. We've understood that we aren't going to get out of our current level of delusion without some help. And so we've come seeking that help. So the guru is like a doctor, but a doctor can tell you what to do, but he can't do it for you. Yogananda used the illustration of some people go to a doctor, and so the doctor recognizes an illness and writes out a prescription for them. And they take that prescription home and they put it in a frame and hang it on the wall. This is what the doctor told. See, I went to the doctor and he gave me a personal prescription. And so that prescription that the guru gives is a kind of a medication that we have to do on a daily basis ourselves. And he gives us a beautiful, I was just so filled with gratitude for the path that Master has brought for us. It's very clear, it's very logical, it's relatively simple. Of course there are elements to it that are complex, but it isn't really complex in itself. It gets complex when we try to follow what we're supposed to do. But what we're supposed to do is relatively clear. It gets complex because Master says, well, for instance, he says you should energize every day. And he gives the reason why we should energize. At the beginning, he didn't call them energization. He called them tissue will exercises. And by sending that energy, it fills all of the tissues. He talked about how our body is really not a physical thing. It's electric. It's made of energy. And by sending through our will energy from a cosmic source through the medulla, sending that energy to the various tissues in the body, it fills them with electricity. It drives out disease. It aligns us with all the various 5 pranas. There are many, many, many things that it does. So we don't necessarily need all of that understanding. He just says, do these once at minimum and better twice a day. And then, so that's very simple. We can all learn these exercises in a morning. We can practice them, but the complexity comes in not in knowing what we should do, but in breaking through the barriers that we have of taking the medicine that the Guru has given. Oh, I don't have enough time. I can't do these. I'm busy. I have to watch this soap opera tonight. Whatever it is, if you take out the unnecessary necessities that we have in our life, we have plenty of time to do our spiritual practices. But we substitute, and so it isn't that it's complex what we should do. What gets complex is maneuvering through our own self-created resistances to doing what we should be doing. And so the Guru gives us a path. We have a very clear path. And in centers like this, we have all of the classes that give not only the spiritual disciplines and techniques, but puts it in context for a whole lifestyle. Because Master didn't come to bring only techniques. He came to bring a whole lifestyle, a whole way of living and understanding and looking at the world that would align us with God's consciousness as He is dreaming in this age. Swamiji wrote a wonderful book, and in it there was time travel. And so at one point someone was questioning something, and Swami said, oh, well, God just wasn't dreaming in that way during that particular age. At this time, He's dreaming this world with all these cars and computers and mobiles that we sometimes remember to turn off and sometimes don't. But He's dreaming in a particular way during this age. In another yuga, He will be dreaming in a different way. There won't be cars, there won't be smog, there won't be maybe nearly as much population on this earth. It'll be different. But at this time, He's dreaming in a particular way. And the Guru comes as a doctor to tell us how to be healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, and most of all spiritually during this particular age that we find ourselves in. And so, knowing that He comes in order to help us, how do we get in tune with Him? What is our part in it? First of all, and I think this is the most important of all, is that attunement is primarily done through the heart, not through the mind. You can read every word that Master ever wrote. Swami sometimes said, you can be living right nearby the best restaurant in the world. You can memorize all of the menu items, but unless you're hungry, you won't go in and eat the food. And so we can know the knowledge that Yoganandaji gave to us, but unless there's a hunger in our heart for receiving that knowledge and applying it, we won't really connect very much. So attunement is done primarily through the heart. Now the heart is not only the center of love, so yes, we have to love. Yes, we have to have devotion to the Guru. Yes, we have to feel strongly a kind of a yearning for what he brings. But the heart is also the center of Chitta. And Chitta, Master talked about that being the primordial likes and dislikes. What's the difference between our likes and dislikes and primordial likes and dislikes? He said the primordial likes and dislikes, think of it as the potential to like and dislike. And then we apply that potential in our own particular way. I like curry. I don't like Chinese food. If you're in China, I like Chinese food. I don't like curry. So the tendency to like that with which we're familiar is primordial. How we apply that is different. But Master talked a great deal about working with our likes and dislikes, withdrawing from involvement. He said it's likes and dislikes that involve us with the world, that catch us, that keep us caught in delusion. And so it's very hard for minds that are restless and hearts that are hungry to say, oh, I'm just not going to have any more likes and dislikes. It just doesn't work that way. But what we can do is we can use our willpower to align what we like and dislike more closely with the Guru. And so if the Guru says, for instance, that we should do energization exercises, since I've used that already as an example, our part in that is to align our likes and dislikes with that recommendation. So if you find yourself using your mind, see, the mind follows the heart. The mind, the reason, finds rationales for what you're already feeling. So if your likes and dislikes are such that you dislike doing energization, then your mind will start creating reasons. I don't have enough time. Oh, they're just calisthenics. I don't care about whether I have big muscles or not. Oh, they were created 100 years ago. They're not modern. I think I'll do modern aerobics, or, and so the mind will create all the reasons to support the primordial likes and dislikes, which in this case is dislike of having to spend the 10 minutes or 12 minutes a day to do this obviously good routine that will help you be healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so if you dislike doing them, you will find a reason why you do not have 12 minutes a day to do these, or that even if you do have the time, you shouldn't. So attuning our likes and dislikes with the teachings of the Guru is in large part how we attune. Attunement has also a musical element to it. Really, what it is, well, let me finish that analogy with the musical instrument. If you have a string that is X amount long, and you pluck that wavelength that goes through that string will produce a note at a certain sound of a note, an A note, a B note, a C note. If you shorten it, it'll be a higher note. If you lengthen it, it'll be a longer note. Interestingly enough, if you have, let's say, a guitar that is in tune with a piano, so that the C and the piano C and the guitar C are the same, if you play the note on the piano, it will vibrate the string on the guitar, because it's attuned to that vibration. And so the Guru is functioning at a certain level of vibration. Now it's complex. He doesn't function only at one vibration. He functions at thousands of vibrations all simultaneously. But let's say now, attunement to sending energy, to thinking of the body not as solid, but thinking of it as an energetic mass, and behind that energy consciousness, he's attuned to thinking of our bodies in that way, which is a higher spiritual consciousness. And so what we're trying to do is, even without knowing it, if he says, do this, if we say, all right, I'm going to get my likes and dislikes in tune as well as I can, like tuning the guitar to that note. I'm going to turn that little peg a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it just a little tiny bit more, because now it's in tune. So if he says something and we begin to work on attuning ourselves to follow what he says, then once we're in tune with that, when he vibrates on that level, we, like the string, vibrate also on that level. And so it isn't conscious. It isn't that we consciously have to always make a big effort. When we begin to get in tune with the Guru, everything in our life begins to function, fluctuate properly in attunement. We'll know what to do in a business situation. We'll know what to do when we're having tension between us and another person or another group of people. Because that attunement plays on the consciousness, but it plays more, as I was saying, we really attune the heart, the likes and dislikes, to the Guru. And as we get those more and more in tune, then why do we have difficulty in relationships? Because we have likes and dislikes that are out of sync with somebody else's likes and dislikes. When we get those likes and dislikes in tune with the Guru, in tune with God, who is that other person, then there's a resonance and a harmony and a friendship and a joy and a enjoyment of being together. And so attunement with the Guru is the primary thing for the devotee, because it is the one thing that will fix all of the other problems, everything. So if you have a guitar that's out of tune, you can play 1,000 different songs on that guitar and they'll all sound bad. If you get that guitar in tune, every song that you play will sound wonderful. And so it is with attunement with the Guru. When we work on with our will, with our discipline, to try to say, Master, I am completely open to your blessings. I'm completely open to your guidance. I don't want to have a life, a pattern, a grouping of likes and dislikes that's out of tune with you. When we have that energy flowing, then we will become attuned. And in that attunement, everything else in life will begin to function as it should.
Hello, everyone. Yesterday, we had a satsang at the ashram in Gurgaon, and it was with people who have completed the meditation teacher training, yoga posture teacher training, and they were asking questions about how to share Master's teachings with others. And one of the questions that they asked was, people sometimes say to us, well, if you're on the spiritual path, if you're taking up meditation, doesn't that mean you have some kind of a problem, that you're running away from life, that you're escaping? And I said, well, I can give you a short answer and a long answer to that. The short answer is, if you think the spiritual path is about escapism, read Autobiography of a Yogi. One of the most brilliant expositions of the breadth of what is reality, what is life, how does science interface with the deep truths of the Vedas, how can we find God, and most important, what is the guru-disciple relationship? This path is not a path for people running away. It's not a path for people who are cowards. It's not a path for people who want to passively expect that the world will change for them. This path is a path for people who dynamically want to change their life. But then we come to the guru-disciple relationship, because that's the key. You know, when our beloved teacher, Swami Kriyanandaji, first read Autobiography of a Yogi, he read it cover to cover in just a few days, and then took a bus from the east coast of America, from New York, all the way to the west coast, and found himself, was able to meet Yoganandaji and knelt at his feet. And as is so beautifully described in Swamiji's autobiography, The New Path, he said, I want to be your disciple. And Master asked him a few questions. He was testing him. And then he asked him, how did you like my book, Autobiography? Which, by the way, December 1st, coming up in a few weeks, is the 70th anniversary of the publication of Autobiography of a Yogi. It's a tremendous thing. And we're going to have different celebrations in different areas to recognize that. But Master asked Swamiji, who was not Swami at the time, he was just a young man seeking truth. He said, "How did you like my book?" And Swami said, "Oh, it was marvelous, sir." And Master said, "That's because it has my vibrations in it." And just as Jyotish was speaking about the resonance between a piano and a guitar, the vibrations of the Guru, and Master put his vibrations in that book. And it's up to us to tune the instrument of our consciousness to be able to resonate with the vibrations of the Guru. You know, I've read autobiography many times throughout the years that I've been on the spiritual path, and every time I get something more out of it. And now the skull is thick, but it's starting to sink in. It's because of receptivity. The more receptive you are, the more you are trying to vibrationally attune with the Guru, the more you can feel his consciousness in those words. And then we begin to want to be in alignment all the time with that vibration in all circumstances. And Master's path, it's so beautifully constructed for the times in which we live. And when I say constructed, that's a poor choice of words. The lineage of our gurus, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Sri Yukteswar, and Master, and Christ from the West. These are great avatars that brought this new approach to God to us at this time. But we have to realize it's like a beautiful light has been lit. Beautiful. I've seen pictures of beautiful Diwali lights all over India, big, beautiful things. It's a beautiful light has been illumined, but we're so busy we don't even see it. And so when we try to tune in with the Guru, we can find how to do it in the pages of autobiography. And someone asked us recently, Master talks about his struggles with sadhana and his different, the challenges he had in life. Was he just doing that for our benefit? Yes, I think the answer is definitely yes. Because even in that beautiful chapter, I meet my Guru, Sri Yukteswar, in autobiography, the chapter. He talks, he'd been Master all his life. You feel that deep yearning for God, the hour spent weeping for God to come, the running away to the Himalayas to try to find God. And then finally, he's about 19 at the time, he meets Sri Yukteswar in Benares, who they both just happened to be there at that time. And there's an instant recognition. And you know, for most of us, and I've heard many people say this when they read autobiography or see Master's picture, it's hauntingly familiar. I know you, you know me, but I don't know what to do about that. And so Master meets Sri Yukteswar, and again, this little drama is played out for us. And there's just this great moment where they embrace, and Sri Yukteswar said, "My own, you have come to me." And Master said, "I feel like at last my ship has come into the safe harbor of my Guru's embrace." But then what happens? The contrasting duality of this world. Sri Yukteswar says, "I will give you all my ashrams, everything I want, have." And Master says, "All I want from you is God." But then something happens. And Sri Yukteswar says to Master, "You must go back to your home in Calcutta and finish your schooling." And Master says, "Never." Amazing, isn't it? But If we understand this little drama is being played out for us, the Guru says, I want you to meditate every day. I want you to do energization. I want you to do Kriya. Never. The ego resists. And that's what Master was showing us in that little drama, in that moment where he said no. And then he leaves, and they leave on a parting note of disharmony. Truly did that happen? It happened for us, because Master was showing that the ego always resists. That's what it does. That's who it is. Just like little children, they reach a certain age in development where they learn how to say no. And whatever the mommy or the daddy says, no. And they're learning how to develop their own willpower. And that's what the ego is. It's just will not yet directed to God, directed towards the individual entity. And so Master goes off and trying to resist what the Guru has told him, does different things. You read the chapters in autobiography, goes to Vrindavan, different things. But then he comes back and he realizes, as Sri Yukteswar had predicted, he said, you will come back to me in 28 days. He comes back to the Serampur ashram, and 28 days have passed. And Master says to his Guru, Sri Yukteswar, I am here to do your bidding. And Sri Yukteswar is cold this time. No more of my own, you have come to me. How can that be? You resist what I ask you to do. And Master says, no more. No more. The ego surrenders. And Sri Yukteswar rubs his hands together and says, now we can begin the work. And it's such a beautiful story to remember every day of your life. Because every day there's the challenges. The Guru shows you the way to be in tune. The Guru shows you the right attitude. But we say, no, not yet. I want to do my own thing. And you know, I read something fascinating in a footnote in the autobiography, just this period when we were in seclusion at Abbot Mount. You know, the different aspects of consciousness, Mon, Buddhi, Ahankara, and Chitwa. Ahankara is the ego. And Master says in a footnote, the literal translation from Sanskrit of Ahankara is, I do. I do, I, meaning the ego. I am the doer. That's what the ego means. I am the doer. And the great relief that comes when the ego can say, I don't want to be the doer anymore, God. I want you to be the doer, Guruji. And when we inwardly surrender, that's the whole of the discipleship part, is simply to say, you are the doer. Just like in the Mahabharata, and Master explains that the character of Bhishma represents the great grandfather who trains all the warriors. He represents the ego, Master explains. And he had, because of his past tapasya, he has gotten a boon. And the boon is that he can never be killed until he himself surrenders his life. And that's the ego. You can try to beat it down, suppress it, squash it, beat yourself up. But until the ego says, you are the doer, I put myself into your hands, then the Guru says, now we can begin the work. And then the whole beautiful chapter, and really I suggest, this is your homework assignment, if I may, read that chapter today. One chapter, Years in My Master's Hermitage. If you don't have the autobiography, go down and get one. I'm sure it's in the boutique. Read that chapter. If that's all Master ever gave us, honestly, it would be enough, that one chapter. Because he talks about how the Guru is the mother, the father, the teacher, the beloved, everything. Healing Master miraculously, repeatedly from illnesses, guiding his life very subtly, so to help him avert disaster. You know, interestingly, Swamiji told us this. In that chapter, Master's father comes to visit, and Sri Yukteswar gives a kind of a bad, quote, report to Master's father about his son, Yoganandaji. And he said at the time, the only thing I was doing that he was kind of discouraging me from doing was I was trying to bring another young man onto the path. And Sri Yukteswar was discouraging me. And so he was very critical to Master's father. But Swamiji told us, and this is very interesting, that young man that Master was trying to convert became a disciple. Master brought him to America, set him up as one of an acharya in a center in America, but that man betrayed Master and turned against him and spoke against him and even took out a lawsuit to get money from him. And Sri Yukteswar saw that, and he was trying to spare Master that pain and suffering. And so even in the smallest detail, and then you can think, well, okay, that's Yoganandaji and Sri Yukteswar. Where do I fit in that picture? Our concept of the guru-disciple relationship, just as Master said, your concept of infinity is too narrow. You are the guru-disciple relationship with you and Master. It's not just the pictures on the altar. It's not another time. It's not another more spiritual dimension. It's right now. It's the battle that your soul is facing every day. And the Guru, if we attune to him, can be there to walk us forward, to direct us if we're going off in a road that will lead to disaster, moment by moment. But we have to willingly, joyfully, consciously say, enough of this ego. I want you to, like Krishna and Arjuna in the Gita, I want you to be my charioteer. Again, it's perfectly symbolic. The Guru drives the chariot of our life, but we have to invite him. We have to surrender. And the more we practice meditation, the more we gain control of the ability to surrender, because we gain control of our inner energy. And then when you begin feeling the likes and the dislikes and the reactive nature, it's almost like drinking milk that's gone sour. It's like, oh, that doesn't taste good. And the pettiness of the ego doesn't taste good anymore. You want to surrender it. And then the Guru walks us forward step by step. Each of us, not somebody else who's highly evolved, each of us. That's why they came. That's why they came, for you and for me. And we need to make the Guru living amongst us. And the more we have these wonderful sanghas where devotees of Master can come together and share our yearning for God. You know, we just, as we mentioned, we were on a little retreat with two other people, Diana and another woman, and we would meditate together every day for many long hours, and then in the evening. And during the day, we would all read individually autobiography of a yogi or go for little walks. But that combined focus, I could feel the difference it made. When I would try to do something like that all by myself, it's hard. But when you come together with others and make that effort, it reinforces your own effort, and it strengthens it, and it reinforces your attunement. So come together Even if you can't make the trip here, if you know there's a long meditation going on, meditate at home. But tune in, tune in. That's what Master told his direct disciples. Be in tune, be in tune. And that's an act of conscious surrender of the ego and saying, this is what I want. And so, attunement with the Guru, it's a mini-life process. And I think those of you who have received Kriya or are working towards Kriya, try to remember in the midst of daily life, in the midst of the marketplace and the traffic jams and the difficulties with family and friends, try to remember why you came into this life. You wouldn't be this far along if there wasn't a deep connection with this great line of avatars. And they came for no smaller purpose than to bring each one of us to God. Let's take advantage of the gifts that have been given in this lifetime. If not, we'll go on. Life will go on. But I remember, and I'll close with this, when I was fairly new on the spiritual path, I think I'd been at the Ananda Ashram for maybe 2 years. I went through a period of discouragement, and it was the dark force trying to pull me away. And I just thought, I don't know about this. I don't know if I really want to dedicate my life to this. I began to think I would leave. I'll go back to my family. I'll go back to my friends. That was a very easy, nice life. Why am I putting myself through all this? And I was really convincing myself to leave the spiritual path. And then I got very sick. I got a respiratory infection, and I was in bed for a while. And I began reading because there was nothing to do, kind of reading just novels and things. And I got to a point and I thought, this is sort of boring. And then I read a book that had some spiritual overtones, and that was okay, but I wanted more. And then I saw the Bhagavad Gita on my little bookshelf, and I took it and I started reading it. And I thought, no matter how many times you run away, you're eventually going to come back right to the point where you are. Why waste time? Just keep going, keep going. And thank God I did. But for all of us, let's not waste time. Even if you feel, we said something to the group yesterday and they all started laughing. We said, even if you feel that you're the worst meditator in the world, even if you feel if they knew how I meditated, they wouldn't let me in the room. It doesn't matter. You just keep trying, because the real work is done by the Guru once we surrender to him. Always remember that.
And I generally try to sleep at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I found that concentration is very good. But sometimes it is diverted. Again I bring it back and start. Though I am a somewhat old man, but still try. But sometimes I feel, leave it now, I will do it again. I will do after 1 hour. Then it doesn't. I don't sit and I don't do. Kindly tell me the way, how to do. Very sincere. I said very sincere.
Okay, let me answer that, but first I want a raise of hands from anyone who has tried to meditate and their mind has become restless. It is the nature of the mind to become restless. And so that will be a lifelong problem for every one of us. It was something that Arjuna asked Krishna about in the Gita. My mind is restless. How do I bring it under control? In fact, he said, the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. How do I bring it under control? And so what the Guru has done is to give us the techniques of pranayama. The mind will continue to be restless until the prana is completely interiorized. So in our meditations, in what we're trying to do, because we're battling against a momentum, a tendency, habits from many lifetimes for the mind to be restless and the energy, the prana, to go outward, our techniques are to bring that prana inward. And so that's the battleground. That's our Kurukshetra, is where that prana goes. Does it go to the outward Kauravas, or does it go to the inward Pranavas? And they represent the 5 chakras, the 5 Pandava brothers. And the Kauravas, which are innumerable, represent all the outward tendencies. So getting up at 4 in the morning, being sincere, is exactly the right thing to be doing for you. Others, it's different. But we have to understand that we have spent thousands of lifetimes being restless, and just a little effort in this won't overcome that. We keep trying and trying and trying, and gradually it gets better. But honestly, I'll say it doesn't get better just in an easy progression. We go up and down, up and down. It's like climbing into the foothills. You go up and down, up and down, up and down. But gradually, as you look around, where you're going up and down is at a higher elevation. And so keep battling against that restlessness. Keep trying to do the techniques. Hong Saw is a very, very good technique to do, because it is exactly on point that you're talking about. Because the restlessness comes when the mind goes away from watching the breath, and we have that single-pointed reference point to bring the mind back to. So we just, as we say in our beginning classes, if the mind wanders, don't worry about it, just bring it back to the practice of the techniques. And gradually, restlessness does not stop easily, but it gets less and less and less. Master actually said that we go from not being able to meditate at all. Then the first stage is that we go where we have a little bit of focus, but mostly restlessness. And gradually the amount of focus in, let's say, an hour's meditation, that amount of focus gets more, until later on we're mainly focused, but sometimes restless. And then finally, we get to the point where the prana is completely withdrawn, and then we're completely focused. But you're in a natural progression, as we all are. And it does no good to get frustrated, nor does it do to feel guilty that we aren't concentrated. Just keep trying. Banat, banat, banjai. Doing, one day done.
I just want
Oh, okay.
And maybe, actually, we won't take more questions, because your question, sir, kind of addresses. Okay, we'll take one more after this, but I just want to say something to you, sir. You know, sometimes we focus too much on our performance application of the techniques. Really, it's devotion that wins the love of God back to us. God always loves us, but it's when we feel His love. And so if your mind becomes restless, if your meditations are dry, try to focus on devotion. Maybe I know a nice practice is to meditate a little bit, then read a little bit from Gita or autobiography, and then come back to your meditation. In this way, you're often able to meditate much longer. But the mind can become dry, and then we become restless and frustrated. But if the heart just is, try to open your heart up as much as you can to God and understand, I will share with you Master's promise to all of his disciples. He said, to those who stick with my path, Master said, to the very end. And he said, I don't mean just doing it mechanically, but with sincerity. He said, to those who stick with me till the end, Master promised that he or one of the other of our line of gurus would personally be there at the moment of transition when we leave the body and usher our soul into the bliss of their presence. So remember that. Remember the promise that just to, as every sincere disciple, that will be their reward.
No, well, that's enough.
Yeah.
We could go on and on and on with the discussion, I'm sorry.
Thank you for bringing in some clarity to our understanding of what attunement to Guru is all about. But I also understand that the touch of the Guru is equally important to reach that space we are all aspiring to reach. And it is one of my favorite, incident in the autobiography of a yogi is when Sri Yukteswar touches the heart of our master, and that's when he experiences oneness. So, can you just enlighten me on this importance of the touch and what you and Annaji had to say about this?
Yes, that's a very good question, and we asked at various times exactly that question of Swamiji. He said that the physical touch of the Guru is needed. He said, but that may have happened already in a past life, and so that now we're open to inner guidance from the Guru. And he also said that the physical touch can be done through the Guru's disciples if the disciple is acting purely, not from his own or her own self, but as a channel for the Guru. And so it's the Guru who's doing it, but I too am struggling with that same thing because Yoganandaji's not in the body. And in many of my meditations, I simply try to visualize him, call to him deeply and say, come and give me that liberating touch.